Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's baking blog. Today I'm going to make a blueberry sponge with lemon mascarpone. So this is going to be 2 layers of a sponge cake with some blueberries in, and then on one of the layers I'm going to put a quick blueberry jam, and on top of that is going to be some whipped mascarpone, double cream and lemon, and then the second layer of cake will go on top. It's actually quite a simple recipe, but there's lots of ingredients and there's a few steps involved. And the steps start off by preheating the oven to 180 Celsius. That's 160 Celsius with a fan, 350 Fahrenheit. And then I've greased and lined 2 8-inch cake tins. Now I think these have a removable bottom, which is why I've done it like this. If you have 8-inch cake tins without the removable bottom, I think you can grease them, put a lining on the bottom and flour around the edge, and that will be fine as well. So I'll go on to the ingredients, and for the ingredients I have 2 sticks, which is 225 grams of softened unsalted butter. I have 225 grams, which is 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons of caster sugar. I have 4 medium eggs, which would be large in the USA, and I've beaten those so that I can pour them into the mixture in small amounts. I have 300 grams, which is 2 cups based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup of self-raising flour. Now, if you don't have self-raising flour, you could use plain flour, but you need to add into the plain flour 12 grams or 3 teaspoons of baking powder, and then you need to mix that thoroughly, and that should achieve about the same result. In addition to that self-raising flour, I have another raising agent, which is 8 grams, 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I have 5 milliliters, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and I have 3 grams, which is half a teaspoon of salt, and then I have 45 milliliters, 3 tablespoons of milk, and then the zest from 1 lemon. I also have here 200 grams, which is 1.5 cups of blueberries. Then for the filling, I have another 200 grams, 1.5 cups of blueberries, and to go with that I have 50 grams, 1/4 cup of caster sugar, and I'll also use a couple of tablespoons of water when I cook those down. And then for the mascarpone, I have 227 grams, which is 1 cup of mascarpone. I have 240 milliliters, which is 1 cup of double cream. I have about a tablespoon of lemon juice, and I have 30 grams, 4 tablespoons of icing sugar. I don't need those for the time being, so we'll set those to one side and we'll go on to make our cake batter. And to do the cake batter, we start off by creaming the butter and the sugar together. So I'll put the sugar into the butter, and I'm going to use my hand mixer, but you could do this by hand if you wanted to. And I'll just mix that slowly till it comes together, then I'll whisk it until it's light and fluffy. And then I'm going to gradually add in the beaten eggs a little bit at a time, and I'm going to whisk all the time as I'm adding the eggs until it's all fully combined. And with that mixed in the eggs with the butter and the sugar, I'm going to add in the lemon zest and the vanilla extract, and I'm going to whisk that around as well. So that's good. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the salt, the baking powder and the flour, but I'm going to sift those so that I get the baking powder mixed into the flour. So I put the salt and the baking powder into the flour and I just mix them around like that, and then I'm going to sift that onto the egg mixture. And this is more to make sure that the baking powder gets fairly well distributed into the flour. And that's good like that. So then I'm going to take a metal spoon to start with, and I'm going to fold that dry mixture into the flour, into the butter, until it's almost combined. And then at that stage I will use my spatula to finish that process as I add in the milk and then the blueberries. So with that mixed in quite a bit, I'm going to add my 45 millilitres of milk, and I'm going to mix that until that's all combined. And then I'm going to pour in my 200 grams of blueberries. Now you could flour the blueberries if you want to try to stop them from sinking in the batter, but because we're doing two layers which are not too thick, it doesn't really matter if they sink, because they will still be nicely distributed throughout the cake. And as soon as the blueberries are fairly evenly distributed into the batter, I'm going to divide that equally into my two cake tins. So I just spoon the mixture in. And with the cake batter divided fairly evenly, I'm going to just spread that around. And with both of the tins filled and levelled quite nicely, I'm going to put those into the oven, and I'm going to bake them for between 30 and 35 minutes until they rise up and they begin to come away from the sides just a little bit, and they feel springy on the top. And a skewer poked into the centre, if it doesn't hit a blueberry, should come out quite clean. At that point I take them out of the oven and allow them to cool down for a few minutes before I transfer them to a wire rack to cool completely. And then I'll come back and we'll make the filling. I baked my 2 cakes for 35 minutes and they rose and they browned nicely on the top. And as I thought, the blueberries tended to sink a little bit, but that's perfectly fine. I've taken them out of the tins and I've got them cooling down. So this is one that's upside down and this is the other one. I will put the filling on this and put that one on top. So I'm going to go on to make a sort of jam, and for that I'm going to put about a tablespoon of water into a saucepan with my caster sugar, the 50 grams, and my 200 grams of blueberries, and I'm simply going to heat those on the stove until they sort of burst open, release their juices, and they cook down to a thick syrupy mixture. You don't need to watch that, it's simply put them on the heat and give them the stir from time to time until that has happened. And then once it's reached that consistency, I will take it off the heat and allow it to cool down. Then I'll come back and we'll go on to the next step. So I cooked my blueberries with the sugar and that little drop of water until the juices were released from the blueberries and it reduced down and began to thicken a little bit. Then I've allowed it to go cold and then it's set quite solid. And I've just mashed it up with a spoon, and what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to put that, it's nice and cool now, I'm going to put it onto the upturned side of one of my cake layers, and I'm just going to spread that over the cake. It doesn't have to go all the way up to the edge. Now, you could use just blueberry jam out of a jar if you have some. I've actually run out, which is why I've made my own little version here. That's good enough like that. So the next thing to do is to whip our cream, sugar, lemon juice and mascarpone. So here I have my 240 millilitres of cream, and into that I'm going to add my icing sugar and my lemon juice, and I'm just going to give that a stir around, and then I'm going to whisk that until it begins to form soft peaks. And that's probably as much as I need for the time being, because then I'm going to put in my mascarpone, and I'm going to whisk that until it all comes together into stiff peaks, which I can then spread on top of the jam. And that took no time at all because the mascarpone is quite thick already. So with that like that, I'm simply going to take it and put it onto the cake. And I'm going to spread that in a nice thick layer. And with that spread in a nice thick layer, I'm going to take the other cake and I'm going to just place it on the top like that and press it down. Just like that. And you can serve that just like that if you want to. That's perfectly good. But I'm actually just going to sprinkle a little bit of icing sugar over the top. Like that. And then that's ready to serve. And with the cake, with a large slice taken out, which I've cut into two, it looks like that. So I'll have a taste of it. Here's that lovely soft sponge cake which has that slight lemon flavour coming through from the zest, and then the creamy and fruity filling as well. That's very, very good indeed. So it's actually quite an easy cake to make, and it doesn't take too long really, considering that you have to make the cake and the jam, or you can use shop bought jam, and then mix the cream and mascarpone as well. And the resultant cake is very, very good. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well. And I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.